Hey, this is Dr. Milt Lowder here with another episode of the Growth Project. For those of you who this may be your first time coming to a podcast, we are a performance psychology practice in Greenville, South Carolina. AMPLOS is a Latin word, a derivative of growth. And so why we exist is to optimize who people are and what they do. And this podcast is a resource that we provide, whether it's from internal resources and experiences to share that, or today with my good friends at the Trehel Corporation, to be inspired by their story, to understand what drives them and what motivates them as they continue to pursue better and be better. And so for today's episode with my good friends here at Trehel, Will Huss, CEO of Trehel, Keith Poole, President and COO, and we are on location at the Trehel World Headquarters in Greenville. So gentlemen, thank you for inviting us in. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this and get to hear your story.
Thank you, Milt.
Yeah, and so as we were, getting together, and I've always heard about Trehel, I've always heard about you, and respected you from a distance. Keith, we just got to know you here in the last couple of months. But when you ask anybody about Trehel, what you hear is, one, those are good guys. Two, those guys are genuine. And there's an authenticity about who they are and what they do. And so when you hear, whether it's clients talking about you or employees talking about you, it's this sense of genuine authenticity that you have the courage to live and work according to what you believe. And as we think about the Growth Project, which is the title of this, authenticity as a foundation for growth is not something that we normally think about. Right. And so when you think about growth within that lens of authenticity, what comes to mind for you? What does that mean to you?
Well, if you tie it to growth, I have to go back. And if you think about like a church or a ministry of some sort, which one of our goals is that we're doing business as a ministry. Our tendency is to count nickels and noses. So how many employees do you have? How much revenue do you do? And that's the gauge by which we look at things normally. I would argue that we look more at purpose and look more at our values and things like that. And when our values are happening in the day-to-day and how we treat one another within the company, but also treat our clients and our partners, that becomes a big piece. And our overall purpose is tied to really the Westminster Shorter Catechism, question 1, but also the greatest commandment. And when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So our purpose is to honor God by caring for people. And I think it's important from a growth standpoint that you notice that we didn't say anything about construction.
Yeah.
That's what we do, but it's not why we do it and how we do it.
Yeah.
And that's how I see growth, is when you're falling into place. It's no different than watching a child grow up, in my mind, and they're growing in their abilities and growing in their vocabulary, growing in so many ways. That growth is a change in the people, more so in my mind than counting nickels and noses.
Yeah, nickels and noses. I'm not quite sure I've ever heard. I've never heard recounting it that way. Keith, how about you? What would you add to that?
I've got no nickels and noses for sure, but no, I think it's the authenticity piece. I think you got to know who you are in order to grow, to me, growth is positive change. And that's not. I was going to say the same thing that Will said about our purpose is. There's nothing about revenue. There's nothing about money. There's nothing about how many buildings we're going to build. There's nothing about construction. It's all about how do we live out what we're here to do. And those other things are important. They fuel our ability to be a ministry. We can't provide opportunities for families if we don't have those other things going on as well. And certainly we've got other goals that facilitate that. But that's not why we're here. Yeah. And that's not how we measure success.
So where did that come up with? Because that's a little bit different in today's world.
We just talked about it. I mean, it was infused into this company 42 years ago when it started, that it was to provide for families and to love people. And so as I came up through the ranks and as we've worked together for almost 2 decades, the families are the things that we talk about, and the people are what we talk about. And being in construction, you typically will gauge or people will typically gauge whether you have a success, or if you have a successful project, then you finished on time and on budget. And that could be the most miserable experience for everybody involved for the entire process.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we love people to accomplish that purpose? And we, again, do that through construction, but it's all tied together. And so our job, again, is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever and to love people. And so that's what we've been charged to do, and something I learned as a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good associate Reformed Presbyterian or
It
good
is.
Presbyterian
That's
right there.
right. That's right.
So one of the things that is different, and we talked about this a little bit in terms of your purpose is to honor God.
Mm-hmm.
How is that communicated in a world today that may not understand Christian values, may not understand Presbyterian? How do you attract talent? How does that show up in a world that maybe doesn't appreciate that value or is maybe skeptical of that?
Well, I think all the principles that you'll see enacted here and anywhere that's living that way are good business practices. We're going to be good at what we do, and we're called to be good at what we do and to be excellent, and that's what we strive to do. But that's a higher calling than you want a quality product. We need to be doing that to honor God, and that's what we think we're doing every time we pick up a hammer. That's part of the process. We don't beat people over the head with that. And I'd be happy to get into how we kind of you've got some graphics here, creative grit.
Yeah, I want to talk about
how did we get there? But we've been pretty diligent with having employees kind of tell us how we get there. Mm-hmm. That we haven't been dictatorial at all in what that looks like. The overarching, how do we put words to even honor God by caring for people? That wasn't. We had the idea, and we talked about the idea and facilitated the process, but it was a leadership group that actually penned that. It didn't come from us, which is even better.
Yeah, that's one of the ways you achieve buy-in.
Absolutely.
And so as you hear that authenticity, what also here is a sense of humility. We know why we're here. We know what it means to us, but how do you invite other people to be a part of that? And whether I believe in God or don't believe in God, it sounds like the principles and core values that drive this business and the purpose, you're going to feel that experience whether you know whether it comes from or not.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think a big piece of that, Milt, is, again, not to get into sermons or anything like that, but we've been designed for community. That's what we want, is community. And so if you find people that treat each other well and genuinely care for people, you can remove all the scripture verses and everything. But what we see is that when you have community where people are treating one another well, it's an effective and an opportunistic group of people that have the ability to do something greater.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to achieve something great and without having people sacrifice to be a part of something greater than themselves. And so what I hear in that is we're going to treat people the way we want to be treated. We're going to follow that golden rule. And what you may not know is loneliness has become an epidemic in the world today. Sure. And so creating a sense of community and a common connection, and we're going to love on you, we're going to treat you. Here's what that means to us. To us, we're honoring God. But to you, here's what it feels like to be touched by Trehel. Whether you work here, whether you're a client here, or whether you're in the community, you can see the philanthropic aspect of Trehel as you look on the website and see, well, here's who members we've touched and here's who we're a part of. So growth, let's go off a Trehel for just a second. Personal growth is one of my favorite things to think about. What or who, and we'll start with Keith on this one, and I'll switch gears on you. Yeah, what or who have been the key drivers in your growth that has fueled your growth?
Will's been a big part of that. And I think it's probably encouraging me to get outside of myself. Seek input. I've spent a fair amount of time in the Henry Cloud world of stuff, in the ultimate leadership and TOP and all that stuff. And for me, that was just a launching point to kind of set up a system to really seek feedback. Yeah. Get people that'll be honest with me and tell me how I'm crazy in this area and how it shows up over here, or how I don't show up when I should, or and that's really, for me, it's been in the last 5 years that it's been significant growth personally, but it's been super intentional on my part, with other people encouraging me to, stay after it. And the community he's talking about has been born out of that, to where you got some very authentic relationships that, will get in there and challenge you on things, and at the same time encourage you on others. And those types of relationships are few and far between, and quite new to me, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But something that now, as I have them, I can see the value and the effect it's had on me, and personal growth is just having authentic relationships with people that I would have never thought in a million years I'd be having a conversation with, and doing it on a regular basis, and they'd know all my stuff, and
they still love you and care about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's been really fantastic, because it's a whole nother level of relationship that makes me better, and makes me want to be better, because I'm going to go ask, and I'm going to have that conversation, and they're going to encourage me, and it's been really good.
Yeah, what I love, and that one of the things I believe in, that growth cannot occur in isolation nor out of selfish ambition. You just kind of hit on that. You can't become who you were created to be without help from somebody else,
Sure.
or without helping somebody else. And so that kind of, as you said, you want to be better because of people who have invested in you and encourage you and see something. I think great leaders see something in people that maybe they've yet to see in themselves, and they find a way through that relationship that you mentioned to bring it out. Oh. What about you, Will? What have been these key drivers?
If I told you all the people that have impacted me, you would expect a better answer from me. No, I've been really.
Hey, you don't have to name names. I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
No, I've been very fortunate. I came from a very loving family that I poured into as a child, and still love very much. And then I had a partner, the founder of Trehel, that he and I were partners for about 20 years, and he poured into me. And I also have had several pastors and other men and women in my life that have mainly pushed me towards a biblical world and life view. And when I have that, it gives perspective on things. But I also love what happens in these, in between these walls here. And there's just constant growth. And I feel like folks have been honest with me and given me the opportunity for growth. And even though I might be in the role that I'm in, Keith won't hesitate to tell me, you might want to scratch your head on your self-awareness in this situation. And it's done in a loving way, and that's how you grow. And I mean, you think about reading a book. We're both reading a book right now about pruning rose bushes, and the work that you have to remove things that are bad, but you have to also make room for growth opportunities. And I believe that I could not have been more blessed to have the people in my life I've had over the last 50-something years to just pour into me and teach me the importance of doing what you say you're going to do, the importance of it's okay to be early, the importance of
say that again. That's one I'm thinking about. It's okay to be early.
It's okay to be early.
Yeah.
We say that a lot around here. But it's also messy when you love people.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be vulnerable. And yeah, you can get hurt from being vulnerable, but you can also have more opportunity because you're vulnerable and have deeper, more meaningful relationships.
And that's what I hear even just between the two of you.
Yeah.
That Thoreau said, "Men lies a quiet desperation." I think what he meant by that, especially men, have a desire to be known, to be understood, to be intimately valued for who we are, not what we do. And it's rare that you see that created, especially with a partnership and especially an organization where we can call each other out. Especially the higher up you go, the lonelier you are and the less likely you're going to get feedback.
Sure, that's right.
And so kind of what fueled this relationship? You came on board, was it 2009 or was that 2005? Okay, 2005. How'd this start?
Yeah, tell us how that started, Will.
Well, Keith and another gentleman had started a company, and they were functioning as partners and consultants for an area that we needed help in, and a lot of that was building our safety culture. I mean physical safety, that we have dangerous jobs, and so what does that look like? And Keith has got a ton of expertise there, but also from an HR culture standpoint, how do you grow that? And 2004 was the beginning of the substantial growth that we had, and so Keith and I would meet, I guess, about once a week, maybe every other week when you were doing that, and we'd sit in my office and spend an hour, 2 hours together, and at the end of every meeting, I'm like, when do you want to come work here? I'm already working here. I said, no, here, and only here. And so it was probably a multi-year negotiation.
You played hard to get a little bit?
Yeah. The truth is, I guess that was probably a big piece of it. Now that I sit and think about it, I had a son that was born in May of 2005, and I came to work here June of 2005.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if there's any coincidence there or not. But
he finally caught you at a weak moment.
Yeah, I think so. But it's been great.
So one of the things that we talk about, leaders and companies and organizations that thrive create a culture that maximize strengths and minimize weaknesses. And so what have you two guys done to maximize your individual strengths and minimize the weaknesses? How would you say that plays out at Trehel?
I can look at Keith and other people here, and I know what they're really good at.
Yeah.
And I'm able to recognize when they're better at it than I am. And so I'm in counseling for this, but I'm supposed to be funny.
I didn't know how serious we were. So
I can tend to just look at my failures and my shortcomings, and not the wins per se or things like that. And so that's a good thing in a lot of regards. It's a bad thing in others. And so what I see in Keith, and several of the folks that we have there, they're just unique, God-given abilities that have been cultivated, and that people have gotten their fingernails dirty in the soils of their hearts. And I see that in Keith. I mean, he's better at what I used to do than I was. And me recognizing that is half the equation, or maybe more than half. But also letting one another, and I don't mean just the two of us, but letting one another have the opportunity to thrive based on your gifts and talents that, again, are cultivated here.
Yeah.
And so we work together as a team, and we don't want silos, and we don't want folks, and we really fight against consensus per se. We fight for collaboration to make sure that we're having good communication, to make sure there's clarity in what we're doing, how we're moving forward, how we're treating one another, how we're approaching a project, how we're approaching who parks where in the parking lot. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I think that we are actually pretty gifted at being thoughtful collectively. And that's where a lot of the pretty stuff happens, is we have a lot of meetings where you've got 5 or 6 folks in the room talking about things, and you got that one outlier of somebody that's got a brilliant idea, or somebody said, this is all fine and good what you're doing, but have you thought about this? Yeah. And when you make decisions in vacuums based on your own abilities, that doesn't happen.
Yes, I think recognizing the strengths, appreciating the strengths, and then creating space for those strengths to flourish.
Absolutely.
That's what I hear there. And a lot of times as leaders, we maybe think we have to do it all.
That's right.
Especially when you have done it all.
That's right.
Yeah. How about you, Keith? Maximizing strengths, minimize weaknesses. What does that mean to you at Trehel?
I think it's 100% what Will said about recognizing other people that are better at things than you are. I think that's a fundamental good leader characteristic, is I'm going to get out of the way because Joe is a lot better at this than I am, and I'm going to let him do it. Joe may also have his tank filled by doing it, and I don't. So it's a win for both of us. I think over the years, one thing that would be kind of a hallmark for us is letting people do what they're good at. And as we've developed and as our direction has gotten a little more clear, and we've gone through the process of redefining our values and those kind of things, the guardrails might have gotten a little tighter on how we do it, but people are still encouraged to do the type of work that they enjoy doing and pursuing things that they want to pursue. But we do that within the confines of who we are and does this work for the overall organization so that it's healthy when people are off the leash and able to run. We want them to be able to do that.
One of the things I believe is true, and I love that piece, and you've mentioned guardrails a couple of times, and structure. Creativity within structure leads to freedom. And that's what you're really talking about. My concept of sports psychology is playing free. So within that structure, here's how we're going to play the game. Here's what it means to honor God. Here's what our core values are. Here's how we treat others. And within that, you got a lot of freedom. But creativity without structure leads to chaos. Mm-hmm. And as you continue to create those guardrails, what I hear in there is there's freedom to leverage my strengths, to use my skills, to have my talents, to be a significant part of this organization.
Yes.
And so you've mentioned core values, and I love the creative grit. That's we do a lot of work in core values. Creative grit is one I have not seen. I really like it. I'm kind of jealous of it, to be honest. I love, because grit used to be our core value acronym at AMPLOS. But you said you just kind of redid these. Mm-hmm. How long ago was this?
2019.
19. And it was a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so these core values of creative grit, distinction, and stewardship.
That's correct.
And it's easy to put it on a wall. But what I like is I've kind of, we got this for one of your hiring profiles, I believe, for project managers. Thanks. And you walk around and you kind of say, okay, well, here's what it means. The words that describe it. I'm using this flip behind us.
Sure.
That's what creative grit means. But what does it look like? How did y'all come up with those? But more importantly, how do you live these out? What does it look like at Trehel?
Okay. We started out, the leadership team that I mentioned that penned our purpose statement, developed those three values, the creative grit, stewardship, and distinction. And then we basically broke the company into four pieces. And we said, okay, we've got a lot of craft employees that swing hammers and things like that for a living. We've got superintendents that manage work in the field. We got estimators and project managers in the office, and then we have administrative employees that help make sure we get everything right. So each of those groups, things are going to apply to them just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So in those groups, we said, what does creative grit look like if you're a project coordinator and you're responsible for getting contracts out to our owners? What does that look like to you? And so we looked at each area of their job. If it's a carpenter, you might be talking about safety and quality and productivity. Everybody has attitude and those kinds of things on theirs, and they're the same. They're verbatim for the first three or four items.
The first three are consistent, and so you can't see this. But what I love on attitude, kind of what it means, what it looks like. I'm slow to speak and quick to listen. Like I'm focused on finding solutions to issues. I'm positive, energetic, cheerful, and encouraging. And so you got not only what it means, what it looks like, and that's for everybody in Trehel.
Correct.
And then down here, you may be on the safety piece or scheduling. That may be different depending on what job.
And that group of employees came up with what it looks like specifically for them. So we know if we're in bounds, we know what that looks like. If we're not, we know what that looks like too. And probably as much as anything, it gave us a common language that people understood. What are we talking about? The other piece we incorporated into this that we didn't mention is the ideal team player framework.
Yeah.
And when you introduce the humility component of that, we think that's a corporate value as well. And it's how we function internally. It's how we function externally.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, that ideal team player is talking about humble, hungry, smart.
Correct.
Like here are the characteristics we're looking for. What does that mean? What's it look like?
So we wove those three things into our regular values and our purpose, and we asked the question, what does it look like to be a carpenter in light of these things? Well, it means I don't take chances. It means that I've got the courage to speak up when I see somebody else is taking a chance. But it's getting down into the granular, what does my job look like every day to live out values. They're on our website too, like everybody else, but we actually
what you've done is something we truly believe in, and it's easy to put them on a wall.
Sure.
It's really difficult to operationalize them and live by them. So how it gives you, I love the common language. I think one of the things I believe, great cultures, there's a common language. Now, how you say it is different than how I might say it, than how Keith might say it, but we're all kind of speaking the same language. How do you hold people accountable to this?
Well, that's one of the main reasons that we have it is for accountability.
Yeah.
Because what the pretense that we've been working under as a team is that this is going to describe how we are expected to behave. And so you actually do use it for accountability, and you've got a situation, and unfortunately these things don't happen often, but they do happen. How did we show stewardship in this situation? Because we all bought into this, and we all agreed that this was going to be a value and how we behave, and let that define our behavior. And when you have accountability is when you see something that doesn't fit in that framework. And so that is the key, is that it does create accountability.
Yeah, that they created it and they signed off.
Yeah. We all agreed to this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not a top-down process at all. It was, let's all get in the room together and let's all think about what this means, and again how we behave. And we're not. It's not. I mean, if you go into Lencioni's stuff, it's not aspirational. It's not accidental. It's not any of those. These are things that actually describe what we do, and we've got a framework for being able to describe that. That's where all these words came from.
Yeah.
And so these again are words that the entire group came up with. Not something Keith did, not something I did, not something the executive team did. We did it together. And
what impact has it had on the culture at Trehel?
Oh, it's been fantastic. It really has. So probably two things came out of more than that, but two distinct things is we established a caring team. Will mentioned earlier, so we want to see ourselves as a ministry, and that's how we function. And we view ourselves as business as a ministry, so that's what we're here to do. And we established a caring team, which is just a way to put hands and feet. It's it's very much like a church, frankly, where that group hears of needs. They figure out as a group, how do we care for a peer? Milt's wife's sick, or she's in the hospital, and he's got kids, and how can we help? Can we take meals? Can we pay a power bill for somebody that's got a financial problem? They figure that stuff out. We're not involved in that.
We don't even know about it till after it's done. Yeah.
That was the goal. Is it's the peer-to-peer just caring for each other that we felt like really puts legs to who we say we are. Another thing that came out of that is we began at that point, I guess 2020, of 100% group interviews that are using this framework
To
hire employees with, and it's been phenomenal how applicants resonate so well with the clarity of who you are, and you're just being real with. Okay, we're gonna pray in some meetings, and we're gonna let you know that up front. And this is who we are, and you don't have to pray, and we don't expect you to be a Christian.
You don't have to believe that.
Not at all. Not at all. But that's who we are.
Yeah.
And that's what you should expect when you come to work here. And we're going to live by this document. And all these people in the hall, they're going to live by it too. And it's been really good. Just the feedback that we've gotten of just thank you for being real, having the courage to be real. And now that comes with responsibility that we actually have to live those things out.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing we could do is write all that and say this is who we are and then not live that out.
Yeah, it's even worse to not do it.
Sure.
Like it's what we try to challenge companies. A lot of companies come with core values. They haven't put it into practice like this, and they're inconsistent with how they live them out.
Sure.
It's better not even have them.
Sure.
And so one of the things we talk about in creating the proper culture, the importance of catching people doing something right when it's so easy to catch them doing something wrong. Sure. And you said earlier, well, it's like, hey, it doesn't happen often, but it gives us a framework. Right. Hey, I'm confused. We said this. Right. This is what I've seen. What about catching people doing something right? What does that look like at Trehel?
And that's something that also has been implemented. The
caring team does that.
The caring team will actually, how do you how do you celebrate and catch somebody doing something right?
Yeah.
And then that becomes a public thing for us that we say, all right, Bob Smith did this on this day, or had a pattern of doing this, and this, and we've decided that he wins the award for this quarter.
Okay, great.
For catching somebody do something right.
Mm.
And living by our values. That's really what it's doing, is how do our people evidence that they're living by our values and what they do on a daily basis.
Why do you think most companies don't do this?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you don't lead by values.
Yeah.
It's been around for a long time. Maybe you're chasing something different. Maybe you are measuring nickels and noses.
Yeah.
And you know that up front. And that's what you're going to gauge your abilities based on. But that's typically going to leave the relational component out of it. And so I have no idea why companies. I mean, there's been a lot of ink spilled over the years and all the books and that you've all read, or that you've read, and you've probably written some.
I have not written one, but
Well,
this is what we this is what we believe in. But as I hear this, and I hear again back to that word authentic, this is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we do what we do, and it's not transactional. That one of my favorite quotes is Thoreau says, "Success comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it." And what I hear is a very intentional thought of why we exist, why we work, how do we want to work, how do we want to live, how do we want to create a community,
Right.
And it's less about what we do.
That's great.
In that process.
We have to be really good at construction.
Yeah.
And the people that we hire, we want them to be very gifted at construction, and we want to build quality buildings and stand behind those. But living during that time with one another is what we've focused more on, so that if we are loving one another well, then we're going to love our clients really well.
Yeah.
And we're going to be really successful in how we work together on a project and how we build something.
And most companies think it can so easy, and I can do it as well, to be external.
Mm. Yeah.
Like the clients get the best of me, and maybe those I work with don't get the best of me, or maybe my family doesn't get the best of me.
Yeah.
So I love that focus of, and it starts with leadership.
Sure.
It's hard to ask other people to do something you aren't willing to do.
That's right.
And so for you guys to model that and that relationship, to hold each other accountable. And I think that's the other thing I would love to highlight. Most people think this is not consistent with performance. And the best companies in the world right now have found out a way to balance well-being and performance. Most companies get so focused on performance that they suffer in the long run.
I would agree with that. I think that's, and it's probably been that way more in the past than, it's still prevalent now. But I think about my dad's generation. The client's always right, is what you heard.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Sometimes the client's wrong, and we've got to do the right thing regardless, and that's a big component. But again, you can build a building that's on time and on budget or ahead of schedule, and you give a bunch of savings back, and it can still be a miserable experience.
Yes.
So how do we do all those things well? That's still a goal. We still want to build it on time. We still want to build it on budget. How do we do it in a way that relationally we enjoy it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What I hear there is we don't want it to regret the work that we've done,
Right.
or the time that we had, and the opportunity we had in front of others.
Yeah.
So how do you stay true to this? It's when things are going really well, you guys are on point, business is good, and life is good. How do the core values and your purpose define you through really challenging times? You said, hey, we started growing big in 2004. You came in 2005, 2008, 2009 hits. We got significant interest rates right now. I don't know what the state of the business is. In times of adversity, how do you guys stay true to who you are?
When times are good and times are bad. I mean, we're called to be excellent, and we're supposed to work. We're designed to. We've got to work. But at the same time, we're not in charge. God's in control, and that's a huge factor. That means COVID was a great reminder of that.
Yeah.
We're not in control. We're limited humans, and to think that we're Anything more than that is not good. We'll leave it at that.
So maintaining that perspective
Absolutely.
gives you a sense of peace of mind. And I think, what's this old great saying, adversity reveals character
It does.
as much as it produces it.
Correct.
So in your mind, that piece about distractions and disruptions and challenges.
I think it's what we've worked to do in all this when we talk about our purpose and again why we do what we do and the way we do it through our values. What we have worked to do is create a set of lenses that we look at all of life through. And so whether COVID is going on or whether interest rates are really high right now or there's the housing market crash from 2008, 9, and 10, that's still the same lens.
Yeah.
And so it's going to define how we look at what we do and how we do it when times are good and when times are tough. And there will be some of both. And hopefully we're bridging gaps in between there, and I think that's something that we work really hard to do. But this is the framework that we believe should describe our vocations and our callings.
And you can hear the core values in both of your answers. Creative grit. What is grit? Passion and perseverance for long-term goals that are interesting, meaningful, and relevant to us. Right. So we're going to see it. We're going to persevere, and we're going to find a way to solve problems, whether that's for a client or whether that's in the community that we're in. The distinction is what creates separation for us, that being excellent in our work and the good steward of the resources that you've been given, and whether that's the people that work here or the gifts that you have. You can hear that throughout, whether it's good times or whether it's challenging times. Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes, our preacher actually heard it from him several years ago, that one of the things in life is the older we get, the less we dream. And he talked about how important it is for us to keep our dreams greater than our memories. And especially as men age, we don't do that very well. So in terms of maybe you guys thinking personally and professionally and for Trehel, a lot of great memories. 42 years, stay true to a vision, continue to improvise. But when you hear that line, dreams greater than memories, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean for Trehel?
For me, there can be a tendency to stop dreaming, that you just get to the point and you say the best things that have ever happened to me or the best times in my life are behind me.
Yep.
And therefore my memories are going to dominate my dreams. I've got 4 children. I love where they are in life. One of them's married, 3 of them are out of the house, one's still there. I have great memories of carrying them around as kids and loving on them, but I'm building great memories, and I have great dreams that we share. That's one of the things I talk to them about is let's dare to dream a little bit.
Good.
And so how do we do that? I think Keith has probably been one of the more helpful people in my life professionally in that, because he pushes everybody here to dream. What could this be like? What could we do? What do we have the infrastructure to accomplish? And so I think when we look at our lives and our marriages and our families and our vocations and all that, just sitting there going, what could this be?
Yeah.
And how could the Lord use this in me or for me or through me or something? And so I wrote down the quote that you said several times and put it on my desk so that I would force myself to think like that and not get hung up on memory and say, I sure wish I was back changing diapers, which I don't.
Yeah. There's some memories I have that may not be at the top of the list.
Right.
But it doesn't mean we don't appreciate that.
No, but I actually look forward to changing my grandchildren's diapers.
Yeah.
Well, maybe looking forward. I look forward to
the
being
grandchildren.
with,
Yes,
forward to grandchildren.
Yeah. Well, but what I like about that, you just, as you're talking, and I love that question, what could this be? And even I was working with a leader one time, and he heard me talk about dreams greater than memories, and he came up to me and was like, I got to be honest, Milt, I've accomplished more in my life than I ever thought I would. I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, maybe at this stage of your career, it's more about who you are becoming and less about what you are accomplishing.
And the big piece to that, and I agree with you, is what are you going to leave?
Yeah.
And the impact on people is something that is generational and continues. I mean, so that's a big piece of dreaming, is how can I be used somehow for the benefit of somebody else?
Yeah.
Is a part of the dream. What does that look like?
I just heard a great quote you're going to love. Somebody shared it with me last week, and it came from Bernard of, I can't get his name right, Clairvaux, like in 1050 to 11, whatever year he died. Seeking knowledge for knowledge's sake is curiosity. Seeking knowledge to be known is vanity. Seeking knowledge to serve is love. And I just heard you say that. It's
He said it better.
Yeah. But I heard that piece of like, what kind of impact am I going to have?
Sure.
On like, what's the legacy I'm going to leave? And in order to do that, I got to keep dreaming.
Yeah.
I got to be better. I got to pursue better. Yeah. How about you? Dreams greater than memories.
You know, I've got a son that's freshman in college, so we've only got one. And I was really nervous rolling up to him leaving and us being empty nesters. It's been fantastic. It really has. And I don't mean the empty nest has been great, but the relationship with him has been great.
Yeah.
And it's been a good shot in the arm for me to realize that the way I see the future might not be accurate. It may be way better than I expect.
Oh, wow.
From the standpoint of, I was up until that point, I was really looking back, exactly what Will said. I remember carrying him around, and I remember hanging out with him when he was 7, and when he thought I knew everything. In fact, that's been a while. But wondering what that relationship was going to be like, and are we still going to have something that's unique and special? And I see that we do, and I see the opportunity with my wife as to what does that future look like, in a way that's very different than it was having a kid at home for 18 years. So yeah, it's exciting to say that I dream. That's big.
It is big.
But I think part of it for us here is we dream based on the talent we've got sitting before us, and that moves the envelope. I mean, we get somebody new that's got a whole new skill set, a completely different perspective than we've got, and we see just fruit coming off of that, and our mindset completely shifts to, hey, we never thought about that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the dreams start. What does that develop into, and where can we go with that? And it's based on somebody else. It's based on their talent and what they bring to the table, and not some grand plan that we're trying to. God's blessing us with the people with the talents that He thinks we need, and that's steering our direction in a lot of ways.
That's so good. One of the things you said that we often do is we set limits on what can happen by how we think about it. You hear, well, this is, he's leaving home. It's never going to be the same. Empty nest is bad. And what you say, it's better than you thought. And we often set limits on ourselves and to others by how we think about that experience or what we anticipate is going to happen. And so what I hear with both of you saying is we don't want to set limits, and especially here at Trehel, on what God can do in you, through you, or for you, or what He can do in you or through you for others.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece when I think about keeping the dreams greater than memories, and what I hear at Trehel, who He is putting in front of us. Man, let's get excited about that. And let's be inspired about the work that we're doing and where we're going. So I love kind of what I've heard, and I think there's so many lessons within this for leaders, for business owners, for husbands, fathers, wives, partners, doing life together in community. What is maybe something, you got a young leader, a young company, maybe you have a young leader at Trehel, what advice would you give them specifically about, hey, they just got promoted?
Serve others. Yeah. And that it doesn't matter who they are. There's nobody that isn't worth your energy, whether that's a client, whether that's somebody that obviously you outrank their value and their needs, and what you place in them by serving them can't be measured. You'll never know the impact you make by doing that.
I completely agree with Keith. I think the way I might adjust that for my thoughts is to love well in light of the demands of reality. And what I mean by that, when I was young and working a ton of hours, I was home, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that's something that my wife has loved me very well through over the years, is how do I become more present in the moment? And so when I say love and the demands of the reality, I'm saying really focus to be present with what's going on around you and not just think about the objective that you're trying to get to. I'm not saying don't think about that, but be present as you're walking down that journey, and walking down that path would probably be the biggest advice I'd give somebody young.
Yeah, and that's so difficult to be fully present. Like we're supposed to be in a world where we get taken and we aren't present at all.
Well, I can only say that because I failed at it miserably.
Yeah, well, I wasn't great. If I got to be completely honest, my wife would often say when the kids were young, would you talk to people in your office like that? And I'm like, I'm not in my office. Like, I'm home. That I was carrying stuff home that I wasn't aware of.
Sure.
And so what better advice than to serve? And within capacity to serve, love others well, including yourself. Right? Give yourself permission to take care of you and learn how to engage and disengage so you can be fully present for the people that matter most.
Right.
Gentlemen, this was a blessing. Yeah, I'm so glad we came over here because the question that we want to ask is, what's it feel like to be touched by Trehel? That's a question I talk about at AMPLOS all the time. And you can feel it as you walk down the halls that this is more than just words on a wall. And who you are is more important than what you do. And so we appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your time. Yeah. We look forward to seeing the dreams come true and what new dreams you may come up with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.